One little change could affect the rest of the timeline. Either the choice made by a hero, an action made by a villain, or a coincidental attendance made by anyone or anything. I am the watcher of the multiverse, and I ask of you to come with me and explore these altered universes. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to Imagine If. It is so good to be back. I really miss talking with you all, and I apologize for it being a long time since I've uploaded the next video. But I'll let you guys know that so much has happened since we last talked. And for now, graduating from high school, I have a little more free time to focus on uploading future Imagine Ifs to this channel. Soon enough, I'll make a new logo for the channel, but until then, let's focus on the present. Before we get to the video, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share these videos to friends that may be interested. And just comment below things you did over the past year. I promise you all that I'll upload these videos when I can, as I have much to look forward to in the next stage of my life. Now, let's get into the video. Warning, what you are about to see is dark. If you're sensitive to violent scenes or mental related things, don't watch this video. But to those of you that want to watch or don't mind it, enjoy the video. Imagine if the Sam Raimi universe had a change, a twist in specific events. Imagine a world where roles in two important characters are switched. Imagine if Spider-Man and the Green Goblin switched roles. Imagine a world where Norman Osborn, the world recognizes as the menacing Green Goblin, would actually be the hero of the story, with Peter Parker, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, being the villain. We know the multiverse is of unlimited realities, different paths that can lead to either guaranteed greatness or hellish destruction. Let us see how two destined individuals' lives would change if they have each other's specified destinies. The story begins in one of the research labs, deep within Oscorp. Norman Osborn, the genius, the billionaire, the founder and CEO of Oscorp, holds the serum in the palm of his hand. For hours, he was in deep stress, ignoring everything else, even neglecting his son, Harry Osborn, to try and perfect the serum the United States military was funding, to create a serum that can enhance the abilities of one man, a soldier that serves the country. He was losing patience with the military leaders, even the board members. They were going to instead go to Quest Aerospace to put their funding into, as they already have something prepared if Oscorp failed. He needs the contract. He needed to succeed. But during it all, a scientist would try to reason with him, telling him that they still have time to perfect the serum, and in this state, the side effects would ruin him. Norman knew the risks, but he ignored it, getting things ready to put the serum into him. Before he could have a chance to strap him onto the table to proceed, where he would become the sinister monster he was meant to become in the original story, he feel like his mind tell him that if he does this, he won't be the same. He would lose everything. He wouldn't come back. With the scientist's words telling him again and again to reconsider, to give them a few more days before trying it, Norman reluctantly agrees. He didn't like it, and he believes that the greatest achievements are always outcomes through tremendous risks. But in this case, he wasn't the idealistic scientist and industrialist, but instead Norman Osborn, the man thinking outside of the box. He turns the machines off, getting his tie back on while looking down at the table he was about to get on. His gut felt relieved, but his mind was still unsettled. He missed the window to greatness. But Norman Osborn knew that the company needed safety measures in order to be the full supplier to their client, the United States military. "Don't make me regret this," Norman simply murmurs as he glances back at the serum and then exits the room. At this exact moment in time, there would be another change that happens, and this would have to do with a teenager destined for greatness, Peter Parker. Just the other day, he was at a school field trip with his best friend, Harry Osborn, where he'd been bitten by something that would forever change his life. When being bitten by a genetically modified spider, he found himself gaining the abilities of one and possessing something no one on Earth could ever decipher or obtain. He wanted to see what he could use these abilities for, and most importantly, he wanted to impress and win the girl of his dreams, Mary Jane Watson, the very girl he liked ever since she and her family first moved in when they were just children. He looked through the papers and knew how to get to the girl, which was entering the wrestling match. He went into the ring and faced against the champion of the ring known as Bonesaw, and he won the match. He was excited to get the money, but he didn't, as he didn't follow the rules in the match against Bonesaw. He needed the money, and he felt backstabbed. But the man that was supposed to give him the money simply said, "I missed the part where that's my problem." Peter would have left, and he allowed a burglar to escape with the money instead, to have satisfaction on not getting the money. Because of this decision in letting the man go with the money, the consequence played out. Moments later, outside, people would circle around and murmur, some showing reverence and empathy, as young Peter Parker clutched onto the body of his Uncle Ben. He was in tears as it was reported in the story that a killer had shot his loving uncle. He was consumed with hate, with shame, and a bloodthirst vengeance to get back at the very man that killed his uncle. Hearing that the killer stole Uncle Ben's car, he left Uncle Ben's body and went, getting into his wrestling outfit and pursuing the man responsible for all this. His uncle's words of responsibility evaded his mind, leaving young Peter Parker rageful and merciless. He caught up to the killer, meeting him in an abandoned building, and went all out on him, not holding back. He smashed the killer's face through the glass windows, broke some bones, and beat him again and again and again, until the killer simply went limp, dead. Blood coated Peter's gloves as he glared at the bloodied and broken face of the killer he learned to be the very man he let escape earlier with his money he won from beating Bonesaw in the wrestling match. Despite the man's cries for mercy, he ignored it. Peter didn't feel regret nor pain, but instead felt satisfaction. He took the bag of money and simply left, leaving the man's body for the police to pick up. Now the story is forever changed from here. Two important characters meant to take vital roles to create the original timeline we know now have different roles in this. Norman Osborn wouldn't have his evil ego, the Green Goblin, and Peter Parker would pursue a darker path that's filled with darkness, bitterness, and most of all, torture. As a few days went, ever since Peter's altered decision, Norman Osborn would spend much time in his lab with the scientists of Oscorp, finally breaking down the complicated code and fixing the serum the United States military so deeply wanted. Learning that he made the right choice is not putting the serum in himself when the serum was still not ready, it gave Norman relief and deep hope. Knowing the day had finally came, he would invite the board members, as well as the leaders of the military, and welcome them, while explaining that Oscorp had at long last perfected the serum the funding gave to make it possible. Some of the spectators were skeptical but listened. Others were interested but also relieved or even eager. What made their expressions escalate was Norman announcing that the serum will be tested on himself. This shocked some, scared others. The board members were hesitant as they didn't know if the side effects from past tests would be present in this new and improved one. But the leaders of the military gave Norman the green light. Getting himself ready on the table, Norman lets the straps bind him and keep him on as the table lifts for the spectators to watch his reactions for when the procedures are underway. The scientists check monitors while typing in codes. The serum would make its way through the tubes and create a gas that surrounds Osborn, and he inhales the future. The progress was struggling, and Norman had spasms and shocks of pain. But in the end, he healed. He came out of the chamber, standing tall and looked more muscular, more energetic. Everyone in the room expresses different reactions. Some of the board members are mind blown, some with trepidation. The military leaders are impressed, stunned, but many are glad to see the results. Oscorp had developed it. They had done it. They created the perfect super soldier serum. Because of this outcome, the military would give Oscorp the fulfilled contract and make it their entire principal supplier. Knowing his work was done, Norman wanted to celebrate. Hastily returning home, Norman would arrive at his home, the Osborn residence, and deliver the news to his son, Harry Osborn. Harry was used to the neglect and being ignored by his father and hearing the things he did at the company. So seeing his father actually happy, it caught him completely off guard. His father explains his success on the serum and how he had completed the contract, and for it they were going to celebrate. Harry would have a smile form on his face, and he would be glad, nodding and agreeing along, as he felt that he didn't have to impress his father this time with school or things that Norman found worthwhile, and that he can actually spend time with him like a true family. The two got their coats and go out to the car, driving to a fancy restaurant. They were happy together. They laughed, talked, just spent time in a way that the two never had before. During it all, Norman would see this, seeing how, for the first time in years, he sees the wrongdoings he had done to his son. He felt regret, but also felt that now, spending time with Harry, he had a chance in getting a second chance before his son graduates. When the two of them arrived home later on, Norman would face Harry as they sat by the fire. He knew it was time to talk. Harry, I know I haven't been the father you wanted me to be all these years, and for that, I am sorry. Spending time with you now, it made me realize much, Norman would say, and he would say more. He would tell Harry how, from now on, he can do whatever he wants with his future, and he will not stand in his way. Harry would smile widely, getting emotional as he embraced his father, thanking him over and over. They made up and were forgiving one another. The original timeline, the two had a rocky and hard relationship at the end, but in this altered world, the two were better, more than ever. But the same cannot be said for Peter Parker. A couple days after his uncle's death, there was a funeral put to place. He attended it, as did his Aunt May. Peter would be kept to himself, locking his heart up from the world. The experience, this version of Peter Parker, he wasn't feeling or heeding Uncle Ben's words of great power and great responsibility. He felt that with great power, it also came with great reward. Peter finds himself holding his wrestling suit, gazing at it as he replayed his experiences of getting bitten by the spider, obtaining them, and trying them in the ring, as well as getting his revenge on the man that killed his uncle. He felt that these powers were a blessing and also a curse. Yes, it was a curse that he had them because of his uncle dying. But it became a blessing as it opened his eyes to potential. Why try to impress a girl when he could impress everyone? He got to work, and he knew that there were people like his uncle's killer out there that were harming innocents, and he was determined to put a stop to it. Donning himself the red and black sketched and designed suit by artist Alex Ross, he went out making a name for himself as the merciless, determined, menacing Spider-Man. He didn't hold back when stopping crime. He fought his foes brutally, either leaving his obstacles both broken and defenseless or dead. Society itself sees Spider-Man's actions and they feel sick, disgusted, and angry. They didn't find Spider-Man's methods to be saintly. He did it to protect people, sure, but he did it so brutally, even destruction. In this world, the people would side with Daily Bugle's head chief and staff, J. Jonah Jameson. The version of the city sees this Spider-Man as a menace, a crook, a murderer. This Peter Parker forgot everything, school even. He rarely goes to make the last days of high school count. He would engross himself with merciless and sickening crime fighting, even forgetting all about the house rent that his beloved Aunt May is so far behind on. When graduation came, Peter Parker would be there and still celebrate, but not the way everyone would. His grades would still be passing. Aunt May wouldn't be present, as on her side she would talk with the landlord. Peter wouldn't know that soon enough he'd be kicked out of his home that he lived in all his life. During the celebration of graduating, Harry would find his best friend, and he was happier than ever. He would greet Peter, saying that it has been a bit since they last saw each other. Peter would be calm and collected, not being his usual cheesy self. He'd half listen as Harry explains his and his father's reconciliation. Harry tells Peter about his father's success at work and how, in result, his father is spending more time with him and giving him agency to choose which career or future he wants to pursue. Peter would be happier for his friend, with a bittersweet smile on his face. He was happy for his friend, and he also felt a tinge of jealousy. He wished his Uncle Ben was still there to have that kind of connection with him still. Soon enough, Norman would come to the two, greeting them. He'd congratulate Peter and his son, feeling proud. When given the opportunity, he talked to Peter face to face, giving his condolences for he and his family for Uncle Ben's passing. He reassures Peter that if he ever wants company, he can call him. Peter would feel his heart tear from hearing that. He was glad that Norman was there for him, but he felt that no one could replace the man that raised him. When Norman finished talking to Peter, Peter would thank him again before leaving, telling him that his Aunt May was expecting him home. Norman understood and nodded, telling him farewell and letting him leave. Harry would catch up with Peter and ask if he needed a ride home, but Peter simply shakes his head, saying that he can just take the bus. Harry asked if he was sure, and Peter would exhale sharply, looking at Harry sternly and saying yes. "I gotta get going, Harry," Peter says again before walking away through the crowds. Harry would watch his best friend go, stunned from Peter's reaction. It was like he was annoyed, determined to go somewhere. This made Harry confused and also concerned, but he quickly brushed it off as Norman took him by the shoulders and smiles, encouraging him that they should celebrate his graduation. When Peter makes his way home, he enters to see Aunt May on the table alone. She was sipping her tea solemnly, clearly deep in thought. Peter greeted her with a soft and loving smile, in which Aunt May returned it, congratulating him while hugging and kissing him. Peter can see moments later that something is bothering his dear aunt. He asks what is wrong, and Aunt May beckons him to sit with her. As they take a seat and Peter is comfortable, Aunt May takes his hand. "I am mortgaging the house, Peter," she would say. Peter hears this and lets it sink in, slowly widening his eyes. "What? Why?" Peter asks, concerned. Aunt May would exhale as she does her best to keep her emotions in, as she explains that ever since Uncle Ben died, she had been struggling in paying off the bills. She had to sell some of her things to try and cover an amount, but it came to the conclusion that mortgaging the house was the best course of action. Peter would be stunned, in disbelief. He was confused, hurt, but most of all, very angry. This wasn't fair. Just because Uncle Ben died, the landlords don't give a crap? Peter would ask bitterly, clearly having distaste for what is going on. Aunt May would notice this, the shift in the room, the change in her nephew's behavior. She tries to explain that this is just how life is, but Peter doesn't have it. Without knowing it, he slams his fist on the table, in which it makes a crack. Ever since Ben died, nothing is healing in this house. Something always shows up, and I'm tired of it. This scares Aunt May, which made her jump out of her seat. She tries to calm Peter down, but Peter ignores. He would get out of his seat and storm up the stairs, shouting out that people should just mind their own business. When the door shuts with a bang, Aunt May would just stare at the stairs, petrified. She would feel her emotions come in, and she sits on the bottom stairs, crying in her hands. It hadn't been the same for both of them since her husband was shot dead, and she didn't know what to do. In Peter's room, Peter would pace back and forth while glaring at the mirror. He barely recognizes himself anymore. He wasn't the shy, nerdy teenager he was before being bitten by the spider, and he hated yet loved it, just like he loved and hated himself. Aunt May's words about mortgaging the house fills his mind over and over. He hated this. He feels like he is going to explode. He knew he needed to let out some steam. He takes off his clothes without knowing it, showing himself in the mirror in his Spider-Man suit. He glares at the reflection of himself one more time before putting his mask on and jumping out of the window, swinging into the city. Downstairs, Aunt May would still be there, on the stair steps, sniffling and wiping away her tears. She hears a knock on the door and she gets up, checks her attire and face from any residue tears, and she goes to the door, only to feel her chest being in pain. She feels her breath hitch in her throat, and she puts a hand over her heart. The knocks continue, and she glances back at the stairs, calling weakly for Peter, but she doesn't know that Peter was not home now. She hears Mary Jane Watson's voice behind the door, asking if anyone was home. Aunt May tries to breathe as she calls for help before she collapses. Hearing the collapse, MJ comes inside, learning that the door was unlocked. She sees Aunt May on the floor, clutching her chest, and she gasps in horror. She goes to Aunt May, saying that she is having a heart attack. She immediately goes to the house phone, calling 911. When Harry was out, having dinner with his father, his phone rang. He excused himself from his father and answered, asking who it was. MJ's voice comes through the line, sounding frantic and scared. "Harry, I need you. Get to the Queen's General Hospital." MJ says, sounding like she's going to cry. Harry immediately gets alarmed, asking what's wrong, but MJ cuts him off. I'm serious, Harry. Get here now. It's Aunt May. Hearing this, Harry's eyes widen and he immediately hangs up, going to his father and telling him that they gotta go, as something is wrong. His father asks what's going on, and Harry simply takes his father's arm and starts heading out. I'll explain along the way. Just come on, Harry says frantically. They get into the car and immediately have Bernard, their house butler, drive them to the hospital MJ was begging them to come to. When arriving, they run down the hallway to Aunt May's room to find Aunt May unconscious on the hospital bed, tubes hooked to her. Harry's eyes go wide at the sight, and Norman simply stands behind, paled and worried. Harry sees MJ sitting by Aunt May, clasping her hand while in tears. Harry goes to her, asking her while taking her free hand on what happened. MJ explains with a quivering voice that she was just going to visit Aunt May and Peter, but when she heard a collapse, she barged into the house to see Aunt May on the floor. She tells Harry and Norman further that Aunt May has gotten a heart attack and the doctors told her that she'll have to stay in the hospital for the next 7 days. As Harry and Norman take this in, they are immediately concerned. Harry simply looks at his father and then at MJ. He asks her if Peter knows, and MJ simply shakes her head. I tried everything. I tried everywhere he might be, but I couldn't get to him. I don't know where he is, MJ says as she tightens her grip over Aunt May's. Norman and Harry would exchange glances. What do we do, Dad? Peter needs to be here, Harry says anxiously, hoping his father knew the best course of action. Norman knew Peter was a smart young man, but he didn't know him as well as his son, but he cared for him nonetheless. I'll stay here with your friends. You find Peter and get him over here, Norman responds while patting his son's shoulder and sitting with MJ. Harry nodded and acted, walking out of the room and making his way outside to get to the car Bernard was in. He had to find Peter, as this was a serious obstacle. He tried to think of where Peter could be. He tried the library, no luck. He tried different places Peter would go to, even if it was just getting some air. And then he thought of his apartment. It was worth a shot. Arriving at his apartment, he opens the door and comes in to find a shadow silhouette figure slouched on a chair. Turning the lamp on, he sees that it was Peter. He found him. Peter jumped when the light turned on, facing Harry in defensiveness, but also unease. Harry steps forth, being cautious but worried. Pete, I've been looking for you for hours, Harry says. Peter would look at him with confusion, knowing that something was wrong, but because of his new stubbornness, he simply asks what's up. Harry would explain that MJ tried to call him because it was about his Aunt May. Pete, Aunt May got a heart attack, Harry says, seeing Peter slowly widen his eyes and take a step back. Peter couldn't believe this. He couldn't believe his ears, and he didn't want to believe it. He stares at his best friend as he explains that MJ found Aunt May collapsed on the floor, clutching her chest, unable to breathe. Hearing this made Peter stare out through the moonlit window, not wanting to believe it further. He already lost too much. Flashes and memories of the man he let escape with the $3,000 fills his mind. Soon enough, flashes and memories of his Uncle Ben come in, making tears form in his eyes. He remembers seeing Uncle Ben's corpse lying there, blood pooled beneath him. His breathing quickens as he recalls the memories of attacking his uncle's killer, brutally assaulting and murdering him with his bare hands. Now, when trying to think of Aunt May being on the ground with a heart attack, It made him snap. His mind swallowed up in his dark side. Harry sees Peter's distress and tears, and he puts a hand on his shoulder to try and comfort him. But he immediately gasps and widens his eyes as Peter swiftly turns, grabbing his wrist and yelling as he throws him to the wall with ease. The impact of Harry's back against the wall made the room shake. Peter glares at Harry's body as Harry simply lays there, groaning and in shock. Peter clenches his fists, his knuckles turning white as he pictures Harry being the man that killed his uncle. His mental illness was severe. He wasn't aware that it was his mental illness. Without knowing it, Peter lashes out, screaming and beating Harry to the pulp, showing no mercy, just pure carnage. When Peter is done, he pants, staring at Harry's unconscious, bruised and bloodied body as it lay slouching against the broken table. The shouts and screams caused a ruckus through the building, and Bernard would come in to see Peter take off his clothes, revealing his Spider-Man suit. Standing with his hands stained with blood and Harry laying against the broken table, half dead. He immediately stumbles back, trembling as Peter sees that he's been caught. Wasting no time, relying on impulse, he puts his Spider-Man mask on and jumps through the window, glass shattering as he jumps through it, swinging away into the night. Bernard's face was pale as he stumbled to Harry. He collapses to his knees, taking the young man into his arms, trying to wake him. Wasting no time, he calls Norman Osborn. When Norman gets the call, he excuses himself from MJ and an unconscious Aunt May, going into the hall and answering. Bernard wastes no time and tells Norman what happened in a panicked and petrified voice. When Norman hears that his son was beaten half to death, that made him go wide-eyed and be shocked and horrified. He didn't want to believe it. What made it more surreal was Bernard telling Norman that Peter jumped through the window in the very suit of New York's #1 wanted killer, Spider-Man. Hearing this made Norman's heart stop. He didn't want to believe it, but his mind told him that it was true. His expression darkened. "Where is he?" Norman demands, already walking down the hallway. Bernard replied that he saw him go south, and Norman tells his butler to get Harry over to the hospital MJ and Aunt May were in. He hangs up and immediately goes to Oscorp. Many feelings filled Norman's heart and mind. He was scared for Harry, terrified for him and Peter, and most of all, he was disgusted and confused, and evermore wanting to know why Peter would do this. When arriving at Oscorp, he gets himself into the restricted section where only he and specific people were given clearance to enter. And he takes the military gear Oscorp scientists were making, putting it on and flying out on the glider. "Here comes the Green Goblin, Parker," Norman simply spits out in venom as he flies fast through the night sky. Rain started to pour. Thunder started to strike. This wasn't just a chase, but it was personal. Norman Osborn flies fast as the lightning lit the green armor and demonic mask he wore. He was going after Peter Parker, the very murderer known as Spider-Man. He had many mixed emotions: pain, confusion, worry, hate. So many that it was driving him insane. But he knew for his son's sake he had to stay focused. He had to get to Peter. From the corner of Green Goblin's eye, he catches the glimpse of a drenched Spider-Man running across the building walls and web swinging. Taking a sharp turn, Green Goblin flies fast, summoning a pumpkin bomb into his hand, arming it. When within range, he throws it, and he sees the pumpkin bomb hurl at Spider-Man. Having a spider sense warning of danger, Spider-Man narrowly dodges the explosion. He lands on the wall, looking back with wide eyes. He sees the Green Goblin hover in front of him, yards away. Thunder roars above as the rain falls heavily, adding to the tension between the two. Spider-Man asks Green Goblin, with a baited and harsh voice, on what kind of Halloween freak he is. "Someone who is going to make you pay for hurting my son, Parker," Green Goblin shouts back. Spider-Man processes this, confused and alarmed. He didn't know how this man knew his identity, but one thing is for sure. This was a threat needing to be taken care of. Before he could say more, Green Goblin flies at him with a grunt. Spider-Man dodges, barely avoiding the attack. When coming around, the two fight amidst the intense storm. This was personal for the Green Goblin, as it was also for the merciless Spider-Man. Blows were exchanged. Counterattacks were thrown and used. It was intellect, gadgets, and precision against aggressiveness, speed, and also bitterness. When least expecting it, Green Goblin catches Spider-Man's web as the web slinger attempts to web Spider-Man to web Green Goblin to stun him. Yanking on the web and twirling around, Spider-Man is sent crashing through a window and skidding across the ground, being stunned. When Green Goblin flies in, he finds that they were inside a post-constructed building. Green Goblin lands his glider and slowly steps forth, clutching a fist as he glares at Spider-Man. "You have a lot of blood on your hands, boy. Harry's blood won't be in yours too. Stand down," Green Goblin shouts with warning and anger. Spider-Man slowly gets up, glaring at Green Goblin with his suit lightly cut from crashing through the glass window moments before. "You don't know what I've suffered. You never will," Spider-Man shouts back. With a roar, the two continue to fight. Spider-Man had never fought a man that matched his strength nor his speed. He couldn't just use his fists and agility, he needed to improvise. As he is tackled to the ground, he dodges Green Goblin's punch, which makes the floor dent. Tripping Green Goblin, Spider-Man jumps in the air, shoots webs on either side of Green Goblin, and he slingshots himself, sending Green Goblin and him through the floor. Taking his chance, he shoots a web at Green Goblin, going in and delivering hard and ferocious blows as they fall. As they get closer to the next floor, Green Goblin catches one of Spider-Man's punches and uses the web slinger as his cushion for when they hit the ground. And they land. Spider-Man cries in pain as Green Goblin picks him up and uppercuts him, sending him flying back. As Spider-Man hits the ground, grunting and trying to get up, Green Goblin pulls out a couple of pumpkins that he tosses, and they pop out and become flying knife cutters. They slice at Spider-Man as Spider-Man tries to dodge or get away from them. When Spider-Man focuses again on Green Goblin, his eyes widen as he is meted by a pumpkin bomb that explodes in his face, tearing his suit apart and sending him flying back to the wall and colliding into it. Green Goblin pants as he slowly creeps closer to a weakened Spider-Man, seeing as part of his mask was torn apart, blown to bits, showing Peter's tear-filled, bruised face. The sight that what Bernard said was true about Peter being the killer, Spider-Man, made Norman's heart twist with agony and disgust. But during the experience of seeing his enemy struggle, he sees something. For the first time during the whole fight, Norman sees that he wasn't fighting a killer, but a boy he had grown to care about and love like a second son. Here he was, fighting for revenge and love for his son Harry, which nearly made him want to make Peter suffer like he had just heard the news of his son being half dead. He knew from just staring at Peter as he struggled and choked with tears that he was struggling. Norman extended a hand, trying to tell Peter to stop. But Peter pushes himself up, starting to shout through his pain and fight Green Goblin on. Norman sees this and defends himself, pushing away Peter's sloppy and slow punches while trying to make Peter come to his senses. "Peter, stop," Norman says as his voice quivered. Peter went on, screaming as he punched Green Goblin and continued the assault. Norman would catch his fists and look into his eyes. "Peter, please stop," Norman says again, seeing how Peter is trying to break his hands free from his grasp, screaming like a traumatized child. Norman lets Peter tear his hands away and stumble back, glaring at him through his tears, determined and shaking. Slowly, Green Goblin raises his hands and removes his helmet to show his empathetic face. "Son," Norman simply says, looking at Peter, who would stare back at him, barely recognizing him. As he slowly processes Norman's face, Peter's eyes widen in disbelief and horror that he is facing the very father of his best friend. He slowly stumbles back to the wall, only for Norman to catch him and hug him. "I'm sorry for what you've suffered, Peter, but I'm here now. I'll always be," Norman says as his voice quivered once more. Peter feels the embrace and the sincerity of his words, which made him come back to his senses fully and feeling his emotions coming to place. He hugs Norman back tightly, starting to break down and bury his head in Norman's chest. He feels his world crumble as he feels the emotions of everything he has been through since the death of his uncle. "Uncle Ben, May," he whimpers out repeatedly, with Norman rubbing his back as his own tears fall. The two stood there, embracing each other as sobs filled the damaged room from the fight, which didn't end in one man dying and the other standing, but in a truce that provided comfort and reassurance. Knowing what he had done, Peter felt immense regret and horror, his body trembling, recalling the numerous deaths of criminals and bad people he murdered, just because he was driven by killing the very man that killed his uncle. He never felt so broken, so lost, needing his uncle now more than ever. He looks up at Norman through his tears. "I feel so ashamed for everything I've done. I don't know what to do anymore," Peter says as his voice was broken. Norman simply looks at him through his own tears of empathy and fatherly love. "Yes, you do," Norman says. "Do what your uncle would want you to do." Hearing that made Peter think. Use his mind clearly for the first time in many weeks, even months. He remembers his uncle's words clearly. With great power also comes great responsibility. Peter's tears fell as he recalled the words over and over, not believing how he ignored such a testament of such wisdom, of such a wonderful man. He wished he could take it all back to make it like nothing happened, like they weren't there at this point in time. But he knew he couldn't. He didn't know what to do, how to repay for his transgressions, how he could face his Aunt May, Harry, and MJ when they knew who he truly was. "I don't know if I have the strength to do it, Mr. Osborn," Peter murmurs. He sees as Norman slowly extends his hand to him. "I will help you, my son. Let me do whatever I can to help you. Be the man we all love you as," Norman says through an encouraging, determined yet shaky voice. His hand extended towards Peter, hoping for him to take it. Peter would stare at Norman's offered hand, feeling the guilt, but also very, very sure that this was the right thing to do. The people hate him. The city hates him. And MJ, Harry, and his Aunt May might hate him too. But what more could he lose when he might lose them for good already? Taking a shaky breath, he takes Norman's hand, and the two slowly walk out there into the rain. This was no longer about revenge, no longer about wanting things to end, but of a lingering spark of hope. A chance to be the man Ben Parker wanted Peter to be since the day he was born. Peter didn't know if he can have the friendship he had with Harry after beating him half to death, nor have the chance to be with Mary Jane or Aunt May still loving him once she learns of the countless crimes he committed. But one thing was for sure, that he was Peter Parker once more, the shy, nerdy teenager from Queens that was taught by a loving uncle on how with great power also comes great responsibility. And this is going to be it for Imagine If Spider-Man and Green Goblin switched roles. It surely has been a dark story to go over. We just went over a timeline where Norman Osborn has a life of reconciliation, a universe where he makes things up with his son and never became the mental ill maniac, but rather a hero, a father figure. Whereas Peter Parker would have taken a whole different turn and basically go full dark side for all the crimes of murdering and slaughter he has committed to all the criminals in the streets. And what we just saw was that it wasn't by pure luck that Peter Parker sees his wrongdoings and comes back, but rather it was someone that still saw good in him. I'd say the story was both heartwarming and heart-wrenching. I don't know if there should be a part 2 of this whole Imagine If, but if you guys definitely want to see one, let me know in the comments below. But again, I am glad to be back, and I am eager for the next Imagine If videos I will be uploading. Like, imagine if Wanda Maximoff fell in love with Peter Parker. Imagine if Kurt Connors got bitten by the spider. Imagine if Green Goblin didn't die in part 2. Imagine if Mary Jane never found out Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Really just so much to look forward to. But again, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you want to get any more updates on future videos, make sure to like, subscribe, share these videos with friends that might be interested, and comment what Imagine Ifs you want seen made. Thank you so much for watching. You're the reason why I do this, and I can't wait to see you next episode when I can upload it. Until then, peace.